Today is 17th of August, and we're on the chapter 36, Vedana-samyutta. I come to Sutta 36.7. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Vesali, in the great wood, in the hall with the peak roof. Then in the evening, the Blessed One emerged from seclusion and went to the sick ward, where he sat down in the appointed seat and addressed the monks thus: Monks, a monk should await his time, mindful and clearly comprehending. This is the translation here. I prefer to use recollected and mindful. This is our instruction to you. And how monks? Is a monk recollected? Here monks. A monk dwells contemplating the body in the body, ardent, mindful, recollected, having put away covetousness and grief in regard to the world. Similarly, he dwells contemplating feelings in feelings, mind in mind, and Dhamma in Dhamma, ardent, clearly comprehending, recollected, mindful, having put away covetousness and grief in regard to the world. It is in such a way that a monk is recollected. And how monks does a monk exercise mindfulness or full awareness? Here monks, a monk is one who acts with full awareness when going forward and returning, and looking ahead and looking aside, and drawing in and extending the limbs, and wearing his robes and carrying his outer robe and bowl, and eating, drinking, doing his food and tasting, and defecating and urinating, and walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, waking up, speaking and keeping silent. It is in such a way that a monk exercises full awareness or mindfulness. A monk should await his time, recollected and mindful. This is our instruction to you. Stop here for a moment. So here, one day, the Buddha went to this place where the sick monks stay, and then he told the monks that they should practice sati sampajanya. Sati, the translation is recollection. That means the definition here is how is a monk sato? How is a monk recollected? Here monks, a monk dwells contemplating the body in the body, ardent, mindful, recollected, having put away covetousness and grief in regard to the world. Similarly, he dwells contemplating feelings, mind, Dhamma, ardent, clear, mindful, recollected, having put away covetousness and grief. So that is how to practice sati. So sati is not general mindfulness. Sati, we use the word mindfulness, it is a specific mindfulness directed only to four things, to the body, feelings, mind and Dhamma. So Dhamma, of course, is the Buddha's teachings. Sati can be said to be recollection. That means putting your mind only in these four objects of recollection. Or you can say sati means remembering, to put your attention or your mindfulness only on four things. The first one, it says, dwell contemplating the body in the body. Probably it means contemplating body in the body. That means your mind is not scattered. You are not like contemplating body among your thoughts. If you have a lot of thoughts or stray thoughts, then you might attempt to contemplate the body, for example, the breath body. When you practice anapanasati, trying to be mindful of the breath. But sometimes a beginner will have a lot of stray thoughts. So when you have a lot of stray thoughts, you are trying to contemplate the body among the thoughts. But here it says contemplating the body in the body, nowhere else. So it's a one-pointed attention on the body to the exclusion of everything else. Similarly, contemplating feelings, mind and Dhamma. Dhamma is the Buddha's teachings, and actually among all the four things, the Dhamma is the most important. Because later you will find out that out of 5 occasions in which a person attains liberation or arahanthood, 4 of them have to do with contemplating Dhamma. So that is sati, how to practice sati, contemplating only 4 things. And how to practice sampajanya, sati sampajanya. Sampajanya, the translation is full awareness or mindfulness. So here Buddha says if a person practices sampajanya, then he is very mindful of his actions when going forward and returning, when looking ahead, looking aside, when drawing in and extending his limbs, when wearing his robes, carrying his bowl, and eating, drinking, urinating, walking, standing, sitting, everything is mindful. So this is the meaning of sampajanya, mindful. Though sometimes people confuse, they say that sati is mindful. It's actually sampajanya, the meaning is mindful. So the Buddha says to the sick monks, you should wait your time to pass away. But in the meantime, you should practice sati sampajanya. Monks, while a monk dwells thus, recollected and mindful, diligent, ardent and resolute, if there arises in him a pleasant feeling, he understands thus, there has arisen in me a pleasant feeling. Now that is dependent, not independent. Dependent on what? Dependent on this very body. But this body is impermanent, conditioned, dependently arisen. So when the pleasant feeling has arisen in dependence on a body that is impermanent, conditioned, dependently arisen, how could it be permanent? He dwells contemplating impermanence in the body and in pleasant feeling. He dwells contemplating vanishing, contemplating fading away, contemplating cessation, contemplating relinquishment. Stop here for a moment. So here he contemplates impermanence in the body and in the pleasant feeling, and how they can vanish away, fade away, they can cease. So he should contemplate also letting go, relinquishment of them. As he dwells thus, the underlying tendency to lust in regard to the body and in regard to pleasant feeling is abandoned by him. Let's stop here for a moment. So the Buddha says, if a monk practices sati sampajanya, and then when pleasant feeling arises, he knows that pleasant feeling is only temporary. It depends on conditions. It depends on the existence of the body and other factors. But the body is impermanent. So the body is impermanent. The pleasant feeling is also impermanent. So he contemplates how they can pass away. So you can see impermanence, then the underlying tendency to lust for the body and for pleasant feeling is abandoned in him. Monks, while a monk dwells thus, recollected and mindful, diligent, ardent and resolute, if there arises in him a painful feeling, he understands thus, there has arisen in me a painful feeling. Now that is dependent, not independent. Dependent on what? Dependent on just this body. But this body is impermanent, conditioned, dependently arisen. So when the painful feeling has arisen in dependence on a body that is impermanent, conditioned, dependently arisen, how could it be permanent? He dwells contemplating impermanence in the body and in painful feeling. He dwells contemplating vanishing, contemplating fading away, contemplating cessation, contemplating relinquishment. As he dwells thus, the underlying tendency to aversion in regard to the body and in regard to painful feeling is abandoned by him. Monks, while a monk dwells thus, recollected and mindful, diligent, ardent and resolute, if there arises in him a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he understands thus, there has arisen in me a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Now that is dependent, not independent. Dependent on what? Dependent on just this body. But this body is impermanent, conditioned, dependently arisen. So when the neither painful nor pleasant feeling has arisen in dependence on a body that is impermanent, conditioned, dependently arisen, how could it be permanent? He dwells contemplating impermanence in the body and in neither painful nor pleasant feeling. He dwells contemplating vanishing, contemplating fading away, contemplating cessation, contemplating relinquishment. As he dwells thus, the underlying tendency to ignorance in regard to the body and in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling is abandoned by him. If he feels a pleasant feeling, he understands it is impermanent. He understands it is not held to. He understands it is not delighted in. If he feels a painful feeling, he understands it is impermanent. He understands it is not held to. He understands it is not delighted in. If he feels a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he understands it is impermanent. He understands it is not held to. He understands it is not delighted in. If he feels a pleasant feeling, he feels it detached. If he feels a painful feeling, he feels it detached. If he feels a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he feels it detached. When he feels a feeling, yes, is terminating with the body, he understands, I feel a feeling terminating with the body. When he feels a feeling terminating with life, he understands, I feel a feeling terminating with life. He understands, with the breakup of the body, following the exhaustion of life, all that is felt, not being delighted in, will become cool right here. Just as monks, an oil lamp burns in dependence on the oil and the wick, and with the exhaustion of the oil and the wick, it is extinguished through lack of fuel. So too monks, when a monk understands a feeling terminating with the body, terminating with life, he understands, with the breakup of the body following the exhaustion of life, all that is felt, not being delighted in, will become cool right here. That's the end of the sutta. This last part now, where it says, when he feels a feeling terminating with the body, it's a bit hard to understand what's a feeling terminating with the body. But the Pali Text Society translation says, when he feels a feeling that his bodily endurance has reached its limit, he understands that he so feels. When he feels a feeling that life has reached its limit, he understands that he so feels. So the first part now, according to the Pali Text Society, that his bodily endurance has reached its limit. Maybe enduring the pain has reached the limit. And the second one is he knows when the life is going to end. So this sutta was spoken for the monks who were in the sick ward. All of them sick, some of them seriously sick. So the Buddha is telling them how to face death, to be recollected and mindful. Recollected means to put their attention on the 4 stations of sati or satipatthana, and not to think of unwholesome thoughts. And then on top of that, to practice sampajanya, mindfulness of the body actions. When we are mindful of our body actions, it helps to keep our mind focused. Our mind does not run away. When our mind runs away, then we forget about our body. That's why mindfulness of the body is always stressed by the Buddha, probably for this reason, so that our mind does not stray away. So, if a monk practices sati sampajanya, and whatever feeling arises, he knows that it is impermanent, it's not attached to it. He knows that it will pass away. And the last part, it says, with the breakup of the body following the exhaustion of life, all that is felt, not being delighted in, will become cool right here. So when our life comes to an end, or whatever feelings we felt, all will become cool. So whatever we thought was important when we die, it's all no more important. When we die, the most important thing is where we are going. A lot of people, they don't prepare for that moment when we have to go off. Then they start crying because they are not prepared. But if we are prepared, then at the last moment we'll have our confidence. The next sutta is 36.11 on page 1270. Then a certain monk approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said to him, "Here, Venerable Sir, while I was alone in seclusion, a reflection arose in my mind thus: 3 feelings have been spoken of by the Blessed One. Pleasant feeling, painful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant feeling. These 3 feelings have been spoken of by the Blessed One. But the Blessed One has said, whatever is felt is included in suffering. Now with reference to what was this stated by the Blessed One? Whatever is felt is included in suffering. And the Buddha said, good monk, these 3 feelings have been spoken of by me. Pleasant feeling, painful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant feeling. These 3 feelings have been spoken of by me. And I have also said, whatever is felt is included in suffering. That has been stated by me with reference to the impermanence of conditioners. The Pali word is sankhara, here it says formations. But I like to translate it as conditioners. Earlier we read conditioners, condition other things. That has been stated by me with reference to conditioners being subject to destruction, to conditioners being subject to vanishing, to conditioners being subject to fading away, to conditioners being subject to cessation, to conditioners being subject to change. Stop here for a moment. This word sankhara, it means conditioners, that which conditions something else. And in relation to our body, the main sankhara is volition, free will. And we use our will, then we condition the world around us, condition a lot of things with our free will. So, conditioners, generally, they condition other things. For example, like A, when A comes into existence, and then because of A, then B comes into existence. So, A is the conditioner of B, and B is the conditioned thing. But after B arises, it will condition C to arise. So, B then becomes the conditioner of C, and C becomes the conditioned thing. So in this world, everything are conditioners as well as conditioned things. Then the Buddha said, then monk, I have also taught the successive cessation of conditioners. For one who has attained the first jhana, speech has ceased. For one who has attained the second jhana, thought, directed and sustained have ceased. For one who has attained the third jhana, delight has ceased, iti. For one who has attained the fourth jhana, breathing has ceased. For one who has attained the base of the infinity of space, the perception of form has ceased. For one who has attained the base of the infinity of consciousness, the perception pertaining to the base of the infinity of space has ceased. For one who has attained the base of nothingness, the perception pertaining to the base of the infinity of consciousness has ceased. For one who has attained the base of neither perception nor non-perception, the perception pertaining to the base of nothingness has ceased. For one who has attained the cessation of perception and feeling, perception and feeling have ceased. For a monk whose stains are destroyed, lust has ceased, hatred has ceased, delusion has ceased. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, he has taught the successive cessation of conditioners. What do you mean by that? You see, for the second jhana, some other suttas have mentioned this. When you attain the second jhana, the thought, directed and sustained have ceased. Now thought is a conditioner because you must have thought before you can speak. So when a person attains the second jhana, then the speech conditioner, thought is called the speech conditioner, vachi sankara. The speech conditioner will have ceased. Then when one attains the fourth jhana, breathing stops. Now breathing is the body conditioner because for the body to exist, to be alive, you need breathing. So breathing is the body conditioner. Body conditioner is called kaya sankara. So breathing being the kaya sankara. When you attain the fourth jhana, then kaya sankara ceases, breathing ceases. And then when you attain the cessation of perception and feeling, perception and feeling ceases. Now when perception and feeling ceases, the mind also ceases, because perception and feeling, when it ceases, consciousness also will cease, because they all come together. So perception and feeling is the mental conditioner, citta sankhara. Citta sankhara. So when a person attains a perception, cessation of perception and feeling, citta sankhara ceases. So from here you can see, this is the successive cessation of the sankharas. Then monks, I have taught the successive subsiding of conditioners. For one who has attained the first jhana, speech has subsided. Similarly, for one who has attained the second jhana, thought has subsided. For one who has attained the third jhana, delight has subsided. So on, just like before. There are among these 6 kinds of tranquilization, pasadi. For one who has attained the first jhana, speech has been tranquilized. For one who has attained the second jhana, thought directed and sustained have been tranquilized. For one who has attained the third jhana, delight has been tranquilized. For one who has attained the fourth jhana, breathing has been tranquilized. For one who has attained the cessation of perception and feeling have been tranquilized. For a monk whose asavas are destroyed, lust has been tranquilized, hatred has been tranquilized, delusion has been tranquilized. That's the end of the sutta. So earlier the monk said he doesn't understand what the Buddha means. Whatever is felt is included in suffering. So what the Buddha means is that whatever is felt is impermanent. So because it is impermanent, if you have pleasant feeling, when it goes away, then you have suffering. And then if you have unpleasant feeling, is also suffering. And then the neutral feeling, I guess if you are ignorant of it, is also maybe considered suffering. Then the Buddha talked about the various jhanas. How when you attain one jhana after another, certain conditions cease. Okay, I go to the next sutta, is 36.19, Panchakanga. This sutta is also found in the Majjhima Nikaya, sutta number 59. Then the carpenter Panchakanga approached the Venerable Udayi, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and asked him, Venerable Udayi, how many kinds of feeling have been spoken by the Blessed One? And he said, 3 kinds of feelings, carpenter, has been spoken of by the Blessed One. Pleasant feeling, painful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant feeling. These are the 3 kinds of feelings that have been spoken of by the Blessed One. When this was said, the carpenter Panchakanga said to the Venerable Udayi, the Blessed One did not speak of 3 kinds of feelings, Venerable Udayi. He spoke of 2 kinds of feelings, pleasant feeling and painful feeling. As to this, neither painful nor pleasant feeling, Venerable Sir, the Blessed One has said that this is included in the peaceful and sublime pleasure. The second time and the third time, the Venerable Udayi stated his position, and the second time and the third time, the carpenter Panchakanga stated his. But the Venerable Udayi could not convince the carpenter Panchakanga, nor could the carpenter Panchakanga convince the Venerable Udayi. The Venerable Ananda heard this conversation between the Venerable Udayi and the carpenter Panchakanga. Then he approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side, and reported to the Blessed One the entire conversation. The Blessed One said, Ananda, it was a true method of exposition that the carpenter Panchakanga would not approve of from the monk Udayi, and it was a true method of exposition that the monk Udayi would not approve of from the carpenter Panchakanga. I have spoken of 2 kinds of feelings by one method of exposition. I have spoken of 3 kinds of feelings by another method of exposition. I have spoken of 5 kinds of feelings. Similarly, I have spoken of 6 kinds of feelings, 18 kinds of feelings, 36 kinds of feelings, and I have spoken of 108 kinds of feelings by still another method of exposition. Thus, Ananda, The Dhamma has been taught by me through different methods of exposition. Now I'll stop here for a moment. That's why from here you can see why it's important to study many suttas. Because if you study one sutta, you find the Buddha says there are only two kinds of feelings. And then you have this view, like this carpenter, he says, the Buddha says there's only two kinds of feelings. But the Venerable Udayi, he heard another talk by the Buddha where the Buddha said there are three kinds of feelings. Then he insists there's only three kinds of feelings. But actually the Buddha says he has given many talks and given different kinds of teaching, saying not only two and three kinds of feeling, there's also 5 kinds, 6 kinds, 18 kinds, 36 kinds, and 108 kinds of feeling. When the Dhamma has been taught by me in such a way through different methods of exposition, it may be expected of those who will not concede, allow, and approve of what is well stated and well spoken by others, that they will become contentious and quarrelsome and engage in disputes, and that they will dwell stabbing each other with verbal daggers. But when the Dhamma has been taught by me in such a way, through different methods of exposition, it may be expected of those who will concede, allow and approve of what is well stated and well spoken by others, that they will live in concord, with mutual appreciation, without disputing, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with kindly eyes. Ananda, there are these 5 chords of sensual pleasure. What 5? Forms cognizable by the eye that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. Similarly, there are sounds cognizable by the ear, odors cognizable by the nose, taste cognizable by the tongue, tactile objects cognizable by the body that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. These are the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. The pleasure and joy that arise in dependence on these 5 chords of sensual pleasure, this is called sensual pleasure. Though some may say, this is the supreme pleasure and joy that beings experience, I would not concede this to them. Why is that? Because there is another kind of happiness more excellent and sublime than that happiness. And what is that other kind of happiness? Here Ananda, secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, among enters and dwells in the first jhana, which is accompanied by thought directed and sustained. Delight and happiness born of seclusion, this is that other kind of happiness more excellent and sublime than the previous kind of happiness. Let's stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is saying that worldly pleasure is enjoyment of forms, of sounds, I can say sights, sounds, smells, taste, and touch. And most worldly people, since they know of no higher pleasure, they only enjoy this worldly sensual pleasure. But the Buddha says a higher type of pleasure, a higher kind of happiness is the first jhana. And the definition of the first jhana is very clear here. Not like the vipassana jhana we heard yesterday. And then the Buddha continued. Though some may say, this is the supreme pleasure and joy that beings experience, I would not concede this to them. Why is that? Because there is another kind of happiness more excellent and sublime than that happiness. And what is that other kind of happiness? Here Ananda, with the subsiding of thought directed and sustained, a monk enters and dwells in the second jhana, which has internal confidence and unification of mind, is without thought directed and sustained, and has delight and happiness born of concentration. This is that other kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than the previous kind of happiness. Though some may say, this is the supreme pleasure and joy that beings experience, I would not concede this to them. Why is that? Because there is another kind of happiness more excellent and sublime than that happiness. And what is that other kind of happiness? Here Ananda, with the fading away as well of delight, among dwells equanimous, and mindful and clearly comprehending. He experiences happiness with the body. He enters and dwells in the third jhana, of which the noble ones declare, he is equanimous, collected, one who dwells happily. This is that other kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than the previous kind of happiness. Though some may say, stop here for a moment, you look at this third jhana, he is equanimous. Here it says mindful. The word is, I think, sato. Is from sati, is collected. So some monks, they don't understand the state of jhana. They say, what's the use of jhana? When you are in jhana, you are not mindful. But you look at the third jhana. When the monk enters the third jhana, he's very mindful. It's not like some monks think, when you enter jhana, it's like a trance state. You don't know anything, as though you're asleep. And there's some monks, they say, when they come out of jhana, only they know that they were in jhana. Then that is not jhana, that was a sleep state. But here, this jhana is very mindful, very collected. And then the Buddha continued. Though some may say, this is the supreme pleasure and joy that beings experience, I would not concede this to them. Why is that? Because there is another kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than that happiness. And what is that other kind of happiness? Here, Ananda, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous passing away of joy and displeasure, a monk enters and dwells in the fourth jhana, which is neither painful nor pleasant, and includes the purification, here it says, purification of mindfulness by equanimity. Actually, I think a better translation is perfect purification of sati and equanimity. So, this is that other kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than the previous one, than the previous kind of happiness. So here you see in the definition of the fourth jhana, the sati is completely purified. I think parisuddhi or something like that. Complete purification of sati. In other words, sati cannot be more perfect than in this fourth jhana. So it's not that there is no sati in the fourth jhana. And then Buddha continued. Though some may say this is the supreme pleasure and joy that beings experience, I would not concede this to them. Why is that? Because there is another kind of happiness more excellent and sublime than that happiness. And what is that other kind of happiness? Here Ananda, with the complete transcendence of perceptions of forms, with the passing away of perceptions of sensory impingement, with non-attention to perceptions of diversity, aware that space is infinite, a monk enters and dwells in the base of the infinity of space. This is that other kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than the previous kind of happiness. I'll stop here for a moment to comment on this base of the infinity of space. You see, when the monk enters this state, there is complete transcendence of perceptions of forms. He is no more aware of forms. And also the passing away of perceptions of sensory impingement. In other words, the senses, you can see the senses close. So it's actually only in this first arupa jhana that the 5 sense doors close. Though some may say this is the supreme pleasure and joy that beings experience, I would not concede this to them. Why is that? Because there is another kind of happiness more excellent and sublime than that happiness. And what is that other kind of happiness? Here Ananda, by completely transcending the base of the infinity of space, aware that consciousness is infinite, a monk enters and dwells in the base of the infinity of consciousness. This is that other kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than the previous kind of happiness. Though some may say, this is the supreme pleasure and joy that beings experience, I would not concede this to them. Why is that? Because there is another kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than that happiness. And what is that other kind of happiness? Here Ananda, by completely transcending the base of the infinity of consciousness, aware that there is nothing, a monk enters and dwells in the base of nothingness, This is that other kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than the previous kind of happiness. Though some may say, this is the supreme pleasure and joy that beings experience, I would not concede this to them. Why is that? Because there is another kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than that happiness. And what is that other kind of happiness? Here, Ananda, by completely transcending the base of nothingness, a monk enters and dwells in the base of neither perception nor non-perception. This is that other kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than the previous kind of happiness. Though some may say this is the supreme pleasure and joy that beings experience, I would not concede this to them. Why is that? Because there is another kind of happiness more excellent and sublime than that happiness. And what is that other kind of happiness? Here, Ananda, by completely transcending the base of neither perception nor non-perception, a monk enters and dwells in the cessation of perception and feeling. This is that other kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than the previous kind of happiness. Now, it is possible, Ananda, that wanderers of other sects might speak thus. The ascetic Gautama speaks of the cessation of perception and feeling, and he maintains that it is included in happiness. What is that? How is that? When wanderers of other sects speak thus, Ananda, they should be told, the Blessed One, friends, does not describe a state as included in happiness only with reference to pleasant feeling, but rather, friends, wherever happiness is found and in whatever way, the Tathagata describes that as included in happiness. The end of the sutta. So here you see the different states of happiness are going higher and higher. And the highest is this cessation of perception and feeling. When perception and feeling ceases, it also means that consciousness ceases. The sixth consciousness at the sense basis cease. And there is no higher happiness than that, because that is the state of parinibbana. When a monk dies, enters parinibbana, then the sixth consciousness stops. So even though there is no feeling, the Buddha says, Nibbanang paramang sukang. Nibbana is the highest bliss. When there is attainment of cessation of consciousness, since there is no consciousness, there is no self. When there is no self, there is the greatest bliss. When we have a self, we keep worrying about the self. So these are the descriptions of the various states of happiness, one higher than the other, until the highest is the cessation of perception and feeling.